Hello and welcome to Listen and Be Heard. My name is Martha Senator. Today, we're talking about reparations. Hey, Tony. How are you doing?
Martha, how are you today?
I'm doing really good. I put together a nice program for our WPVM listeners that was inspired by this interview that you did with Dr. Mullen.
Dwight Mullen, that's correct. He is the chair of the advisory committee for reparations in Asheville.
Right, but he has like a longer experience too with reparations, like even before he started doing this with Asheville, the city of Asheville, right?
Yes, he's a very interesting person. He's originally from Watts. He's been living in Asheville for, I guess, since the 1980s. But he also has international experience. He worked in Nigeria.
Right, and all the way back to the South African negotiations. Laura Legnick is Asheville's local authority on agriculture and climate change and so on. And I think Dr. Mullen is another local authority on the subject of reparations.
Yeah, and I did learn a lot from our conversation, that he started the Africana Studies department at UNC Asheville, and quite accomplished. And it was a pleasure speaking to him.
So this whole program today is based around this interview that you did with Dr. Mullen. You were telling me you really wanted to do this because it's something close to your, that you're very concerned about. Maybe you could tell me why this was really important for you to do this program.
Well, for one, we're in Black August, and I couldn't we can't let Black August go by without doing something for the Black community. Black August is kind of an alternative, I guess, Black history. It was started in the California prison system, George Jackson, to bring awareness on the conditions in prisons. Also, there's a lot of significant things that happen in Black history during the month of August, not the least of which were the first Africans that were brought over here in 1619.
Black August. Would you hang on a cliff's edge, sword sharp, slashing fingers while jackboot screws stomp heels on peeled flesh bones and laugh? Let go. Die, damn you, die. Could you hang on 20 years, 30 years? 20 years, 30 years, and more brave Black brothers buried in U.S. concentration camps, they hang on. Black light shining in torture chambers, Rochelle, Yogi, Sundiata, Sekou, Warren, Chip, Seth, Herman, Jalil, and more, they resist. Black August. Nat Turner, insurrection chief, executed. Black August. Jonathan George dead in battle's light. Black August. Fred Hampton, Black Panthers, African Brotherhood murdered. Black August. Kawasi Balagoon, Nur Abdul Khayyam, captured warriors dead. Black August. Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Ella Baker, Ida B. Wells, Queen Mother Moore, their last breaths drawn fighting death. Black August. Black August. Watchword for Black liberation, for human liberation, sword to sever the shackles, light to lead children of every nation to safety. Black August. Resist the American nightmare.
brought up these books that Dr. Mullen suggested to you to read.
Yeah, very, very comprehensive books. They're essays and they're quite scholarly. Some of them are very heavy with statistics, but really it's an overview of the history of Black America and how we got to where we are now. The Black Reparations Project is one of the books, and then the other one is called From Here to Equality. And both of them were edited by William Darity Jr. and Kirsten Mullen. And they're a husband and wife team. And you can search them online as well. They've done lots of interviews about, reparations, what reparations means, and, why the case for reparations is a valid case and why it should be something that should be legislatively a reality.
In the matter concerning the people formerly known as Negroes versus the government of the United States and any other Americans that benefited from the enslavement and subsequent criminal treatment of said human beings.
Come on and bring on the reparations. Come on and bring on the reparations. Oh, master of the perfect word, universe, technological fork-tongue, riddle me this. If the Chinese can come from China and the French can come from France, what made you think you could get niggas out of Africa in the first place? Just because you put puppies in the oven, that don't make them biscuits. Reparations on GP.
We want.
Come on and bring on the reparations. 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 For all the unrequited home runs, brothers be burning up the bases, the crowd be going mad. Brothers be crossing over home plate, go outside and can't get a cab. For Lil Richard, teaching the Beatles how to scream like Aunt Jemima without her pancakes. And all the other dark and unknown rockers, electrified, the Republic sanctified, shaking that Cold War out the booty body politic. Come on and bring on the reparations. 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 For the beat in beatnik, white Negroes and such, getting off up under that great music in them little ass 5 spots. For the jazz in the jazz age, making your women wiggle and squirm, and you trying to twist and do the worm. Your abstract expressionism, drism, dripping. You might say, if I was you, I would go on the road and howl too. Jimmy Dean and Elvis, they can go to wherever they went. And Marilyn too, except she got caught in a trick and got bent out of that cute little shape she had going. Come on and bring on the reparations.
If the laws of retribution apply to all of the men, and there's restitution granted, and the soldiers free from the pen, now our backs are to the corner. When there's our day for redemption,
come on and bring on the reparations. For the Birmingham Gospels, 4 little girls come Sunday. For the Jesus remix and those redneck streets, fire hose, mad dog, crucifix. And what exactly did you say you was doing at the time? As our soft shoe on the rock of edges. For the privilege in your skin, a wounded knee, a trail of tears. For the Indian in us,
we want
all of the hip and all the swing.
We want
all of the hip and all the cool.
Reparations.
All of the hip and all the swing.
Reparations.
All of the deep and all the cool.
We want
all of the hip and all the swing.
We want
all of the deep and all the cool.
Reparations.
For the spook with the metal detector sitting by your door. Open just enough, probably a moon full of cocaine on the table. Monica on her knees doing secret service. You humming mum under wraps. And what about all the flags we so proudly hail? Marvin Gaye singing, oh, say, can you see? Wearing shades like mirrors so you can reflect yourself. himself at the All-Star game, relaxed and feeling good. The dog looker doing his looking like he was blind, bearing witness to the whiteness of whiteness, pretending you was the only one who could see. 'Tis after all about thee, just like you like it. Mercy, mercy, mercy me, etc. and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. For the missing royalty checks and so on and so forth. For VD and Tuskegee called syphilis and so on and so forth. Think of it as a down payment on the interest compounded. Them 40 acres notwithstanding, that mule notwithstanding, multiplied, magnified, quantized, digitized. What to say about forgiveness, between you, and your God.
Reparations.
Come on and bring on the
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 Reparations.
taxation without
Reparations. 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 Reparations.
There are some interesting chapters in here. For instance, educational inequalities and the case for reparations, unequal housing and the case for reparations, the African-American health burden, disproportionate and unresolved. Let's see, reparations and adult education, civic and community engagement for lifelong learners. Let's see, the children of slavery, genealogical research and the establishment of eligibility for reparations. And considerations for a design of a reparations plan. He consulted with many different scholars on this issue and culminated with the book here, the Black Reparations Project, which is a pretty comprehensive book of essays.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that betwixt niggas of the South and the women at the North, all talking about rights, the white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there say that women needs to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Well, nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Now, look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered unto barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as any man, and bear the lash as well, and ain't I a woman? Now, I have borne 13 children, and seen most all of them sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then it talks about with this thing in the head, what's this they call it? Intellect, yeah, that's it, honey. What that got to do with women's rights or niggas' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yourn holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? Then that little man in black there, he say women can't have as much rights as men cause Christ want a woman. Well, where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they is asking to do it. The men better let them.
What's happening, everybody? This is Tony Robles. Listen and Be Heard Radio on WPVM FM. Today we have a very, very special guest. I want to preface it by saying that we are in Black August right now. And for the WPVM listeners who don't know what Black August is, Black August takes place in August, during the month of August, and it was started in California, in the California prison system in the 1970s by Black freedom fighters who wanted to honor the lives and deaths of Black political prisoners killed by the state, to bring awareness to prison conditions, and to honor the radical tradition of Black resistance. Black history is very significant in the month of August. The first Africans that came to this continent that were enslaved came to Virginia in August. I believe it was Hampton, Virginia. There's many, many things that happened in August. That's the significance of that. One of the things that's extremely significant right now is the issue of the case for reparations. And our guest is Dr. Dwight Mullen. He is the chair of the Asheville-Buncombe County Reparations Commission. He is professor emeritus in political science at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, where he taught for 34 years. Dr. Mullen, thank you so much for coming and being on our program today.
When you say 34 years, it shakes me. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure. I was looking up some things online about you and your history, and you apparently had taught in Nigeria for a time, and you were, I guess, consulted, or you aided in I guess there was the rewriting of the Constitution, and they needed somebody to come in and lend some expertise on local government. What I wanted to find out was, being from the U.S. and being in that capacity, how does that inform, your work as a scholar and as a community advocate?
Well, what the Nigerians had done, this was during the Second Republic, they had modeled the national constitution on the U.S. Constitution. But you see, the U.S. Constitution is flawed. And one of the flaws is that it doesn't account for local government. And so they wanted to account for local government. But the issue was how do you mix this Western form of government documents and legalities with traditional governments that have existed for centuries? Because they had local government, they just didn't know how to incorporate it as one of the equal branches of the federal system. So I was there to try to work through that, and my work with it came into relevancy because of my experiences with neighborhood youth programs and the war on poverty, as federal funds came into local areas directly without going into the state coffers or state or the city system. So here I was in Los Angeles as a young kid participating in these programs that were being funded directly by the federal government. That maximum feasible participation phrase that Robert Kennedy incorporated into the legislation, we used to its maximum until they finally figured it out and changed it and took the money away from us.
What must be conveyed here is greater than what could come from only pen and ink. Those of us tripping in Trip City, walking a crooked path straighter than you think. Only two things to be said here. It's later than you think, later than you think. As we busy ourselves elevating our imaginations about ourselves, as we thirst for another drink, doing the impossible with nothing straighter than you think. While in the city, what a pity, it's later than you think, later than you think. Now giddy up, ride 'em, cowboy, lest your throne hard upon your stink. It's so nice to know that you're a friend of mine, to toss a rope when I begin to sink. That you may know for you I'll do same, life straighter than you think. That you may know, I told you so, it's later than you think, later than you think. Still in time will come a sign that must be apprehended and without a blink, lest we find ourselves tripping over that which is straighter than you think. To find ourselves tripping over a timepiece whose face indicates it's later than you think, later than you think. Now I realize that the sunsets can be lonesome sometimes as we ponder the missing link. Well, the dark clouds hang low as the archer aims his bow, straighter than you think. Mother St. Mary, pray for us. We call ourselves the Trip City Gang. Please excuse my slang, but it's later than you think, later than you think. It's your world. And you wear it well, though I can't ever recall having seen you look as well as you do in fake mink. Well, as you know, like the tides, the fashions, they come and go straighter than you think. It's like this, and I'm sure you'll all agree that what once was above now resides upon the bottom of the sea, where it's later than you think, later than you think. It seems like only yesterday, yet 2,000 years have gone before our eyes, all in the time that it takes to wink. Then let it come as no surprise that I say to you that it is later than you think, later than you think. I'm glad I met you, you betcha you can count on me, I'll never think. I could never be poor, having known you straighter than you think. Therefore, I bequeath you my only wealth, a copy of this poem, though made in only carbon and zinc. I want you to hang it somewhere between the judge and the half-angel. I want you to hang it over your kitchen sink, as I bid you good day, but never goodbye, 'cause it's later than you think, later than you think. What must needs be conveyed here is far greater than what could come from only pen and ink. Those of us tripping in Trip City, USA, walking a crooked path straighter than you think. Only one thing remains to be said here. It's later than you think.
Now, you are originally from Watts, which is a community, a Black community in Southern California that has seen its share of economic, police violence, just attacks all the way around. But you've lived in Asheville since, I guess you've lived in Asheville since the 1980s. Tell us about your evolution in the case for reparations as it applies to your work as an educator and somebody who's in public policy.
I have been associated with reparations off and on because of my support for the war against apartheid in South Africa. And I was in Johannesburg when they were going through the Truth and Reconciliation hearings.
Okay.
And as those atrocities surfaced, it became obvious you couldn't just leave it alone. Something had to happen. To give restitution, to provide a way of breaking down the barriers and the hierarchy that had been established by the apartheid state. And in doing so, it began looking to me more and more like the needs of African Americans here in this country following enslavement and following segregation, but abbreviated because of the end of the civil rights movement. And so my work here began with data collection. And so the state, it was this undergraduate research project that began in 2006, 2007 school year called the State of Black Asheville. And they began documenting the outcomes of public policy areas by race and by gender, and did so for the next, 12, 13 years.
Been round the block once or twice. I bought the ticket and paid the price. Sitting back a long time, sitting there trying to keep my cool. Whole time I'm steady waiting, my 40 acres and my mule. Well, they told me a tale, and I believed it.
never received it. Sitting by the mailbox, sitting there waiting like a fool. Is it ever coming? My 40 acres and my mule. I'm waiting on justice. I'm waiting on truth, baby. I'm praying for patience. I'm looking for proof, baby. Proof that all this waiting and trying to live the golden rule. Well, has it made me bought my ticket? My 40 acres on my mule. Oh, no, no. Has it made me bought my ticket? My 40 acres and my mule. My mule.
This is WPVM LP 103.7 in Asheville. My name is Martha Senator, and this is Listen and Be Heard. In addition to the interview by Tony Robles of Dr. Dwight D. Mullen, you've been listening to a variety of spoken word recordings on the subject of reparations, Black August, Black rights, civil liberties, American history. First recording was a cut called Black August from a CD called Wild Poppy, a poetry jam across prison walls. You also heard Reparations from Sekou Sundiata. We heard the words of Sojourner Truth, and a cut called Later Than You Think by a group called Copus, who used to come appear at Listen and Be Heard Poetry Cafe once in a while, back in the day in the Bay Area of California. And that's also the title cut of that CD, Later Than You Think. Today, we're talking about reparations. A little conversation, a little spoken word, a little music. It's August. It's Black August. It's also nearing the end of summer, but not quite. But kids are going off to college. There's lots of us about to be empty nesters. So take your time, enjoy these few weeks that are still summer, but you know that a change is in the air. Personally, and hopefully when it comes to reparations as well. We'll continue now with Tony Robles' conversation with Professor Dwight D. Mullen.
I want to bring two books into our conversation, one of which you had recommended to me. It's the Black Reparations Project, a handbook for racial justice, that is edited by a husband and wife team, William A. Darity Jr. and A. Kirsten Mullen, and also Lucas Hubbard. And another book that they also work together on is called From Here to Equality: Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. And just a little background on William Darity, he's also known as Sandy. He is the Samuel Dubois Cook Professor of Public Policy, African and African American Studies and Economics, and founding director of the Samuel Dubois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke University. His wife, Kirsten Mullen, is a folklorist and the founder of Artifactual, which is an arts consulting practice, and Carolina Circuit Writers, a literary consortium that brings expressive writers of color to the Carolinas. I know stories are so important, because if we don't remember our stories, we really don't have much of an anchor. We need to remember William Darity Jr., he's one of the editors of the book. He defines reparations as a program of acknowledgement, redress, and closure for a grievous injustice, with a goal of eliminating the racial wealth gap. What do you see, Dr. Mullen, as the biggest misconception that people have about the issue of reparations?
Yeah, I've had some interesting conversations with Sandy about it. He and I are on the same page when it comes to the use of data to come to a resolution of policy issues. But we disagree on the primary cause, the primary objective as wealth, closing the wealth gap. There's another author I'd point you to. His name is Adolph Reed Jr. And
Adolph Reed
Jr.? Yeah. He was sort of a classmate, a mentor kind of thing. His father was major writer, scholar during the Black nationalist movement. But Adolph Reed Jr., his latest piece is called The South, Jim Crow and Its Afterlives.
Okay.
And what he's doing in here is saying that it's not enough to just collect wealth and to close the wealth gap, because we end up following the same models as that produce the problems that we are encountering today. What's part of reparations is the coming up not just of the solutions to problems, but the model for a new future. Those are two different things. And Darity's definition falls short of that. It addresses injustice, but it doesn't create a scenario for justice.
So what you see is lacking is the mechanisms in which to put the redress to work so that it really works. In other words, right?
Yeah. It's the same mistake that the civil rights movement made. Is that the civil rights movement, they're totally correct. Jim Crow had to go. I mean, no more segregation. That racial hierarchy, particularly by law, but even more importantly, informally, that had to end. And we're still working on ending the vestiges of that era. But what it failed was it assumed that if you removed the problem, then all would be well. And it's not. All it does is create a vacuum. And so what we need also to do is to construct a model of what it is we want to become.
Reconnect and the need for a reconnect, redo, reorder my first soul, to stand in the gate and speak to the past, the rebirth of my senses from captivity foe, reintroduce light into retributions of athematic sorceries, calm nerves with medicines from the earth, foreparents used to take doses of guilt from an unqualified Sherman, re-emancipated in an ocean of supreme doubt. Retrap my purpose, dare you try, yet now I will fire freely, fire incense upon the altar of my soul, awakening light hidden in inner chambers of time. Lights coming from your ancestor veins on a hanger string of guilt and adulation, re-intentioned spirits gone bad, but the heart spoke to the heart, and the re-atonement unspoken over fire. rekindled and made alive unto a repentant weeping. Speak up, speak up. Reorder light, rekindle undying spirits, hinged on aggressive compassion. Re-interfere into our unangered souls, foretold sentences of death, tangled fixes on self-heal, self-denial. Retributions coming, reordered, I said, by the universe. Reparations out of mankind's hand now, because unhuman kind suppose man unkind. Our request got turned over to Mama. Mama made it before a universal court where the heart tries the heart, tied down on judgment. Remember Osiris, the heart judges the heart, standing before God with balances to balance. The heart come forth and reveal her own heart, like telling righteously on her own self. Re-herb the plane and planet, re-qualify the giver of life, death, reconcile our meek back into their rightful inheritance, their birthright. Heretofore, the earth awaits, the land waits to be given back in reparations of Mother Earth children. Retool us with accolades on love, my body, soul with yours. Arise to the new glory morning, sun of beginning universe, a recoding of our beginnings, community oneness, a reheal. Reheal my pain, reheal the planet, reheal greeds over Mama that took her power away. Reheal the want, desire, and need for oneness. Reheal us back to our oneness. Reheal our nest.
Going back to, the Black Reparations project, and I do appreciate you, Dr. Mullen, for pointing me in this direction. It made me think of something that Malcolm X said. He said that land, or something like this, that land was really the basis for power and self-sufficiency. And at the end of the Civil War, there was a promise made to Black Americans that were enslaved by General Sherman as redress to the harm that was done. I had read somewhere that the promise, had it been honored, that the value in the dollars, and I'm talking about the 40 acres and the mule, that the current value in today's dollars would, I think, total something like $6.4 trillion. I wanted to ask you if this was an accurate estimate, and can you talk about that in contrast to the land grants that white folks had gotten from the U.S. government, and how wealth was generated, and how that contributed highly to the wealth disparities between white and Black Americans?
The policies of the federal government particularly, and then reinforced by the state governments, definitely significantly impacted the wealth African Americans hold today. But again, we run across this thing of saying that we assume that the mechanisms that that applied, that put us in this perilous position of needing land to have wealth, and then that they would remain static. Those mechanisms evolved also. And so a question becomes, would the land given along with a mule, which I was pointed out to by one of my brothers, is that, mules are sterile. So getting more mules ain't gonna happen. So this is, but one of the things is that you get this land. Who's to say that the racist mechanisms that allowed for enslavement would still have deprived Black folk of the land that was granted if it had followed through after the Civil War. If the post World War II world is any example, folk were very comfortable excluding us from the Fair Housing Act, in terms of support for the building of today's middle class. I mean, we would not have a white middle class in this country had it not been federal intervention that deliberately excluded us, just like it deliberately excluded us during our agricultural era from having a mule and 40 acres. I mean, it's those mechanisms that mutate and adjust, but yield the same outcomes that I'm most concerned about reparations addressing.
So basically, it's they always talk about safety nets, but there's always a hole.
Yes.
It's an umbrella that might have 3 or 4 holes, and then you're getting soaked, and then they're going to charge you for being wet.
Yes. One of the things I've suggested I've caught in flack behind it. Your criticisms, but it's not criticisms that are, I think, grounded in much, is that we have a history of white institutions providing one thing for one population, depriving the very same thing for another population based on race or gender. My thing is that the law does not allow that to happen anymore. It's not supposed to be an open deprivation of the privileges of citizenship. But at the same time, I think the Black community, the indigenous communities, brown communities, I think folk will be fools to think that the elimination of the problem will lead automatically to the solution. And that's just not the case. It's where I agree with Adolph Reed, is that we've got to be clear about the mechanisms by which we govern our own interests. And so I am all in support of being with white institutions and predominant institutions in education and healthcare and criminal justice and economic development and housing. I'm all for those things, that we are there at the table. But I also think that we should be clear on the need to have Black governed institutions in education. I think we're very much in the need of community-based clinics for our healthcare. I think that the correction of urban renewal and giving land back to its residents and owners, I think that's a very real part of what's going on, and so forth. And so I think that those parallel developments are one way to address it.
Working day and days, all iron in my blood now. Shackles on my hands, my brain. They say I'm free, but how? I hammer down the line. Folks said I'd done wrong. Chinese man on the other side. Different words in the same song, same song, same song. From home, neither of us can get back. Shattered teeth, clanging bone, we bang out more tracks. Farther away from home, neither of us can get back. Shattered teeth, clanging bone, we bang out more tracks. John Henry whispered to me, said he shouldn't have beat that drill. Story makes us proud to be worked to death by free will. Iron carbon makes steel. Body of the guitar you play. Shoulder business, grinding wheels. Ashes, red lines to my last days. Ashes, red lines to my last days. Ashes, red lines to my last days. Farther away from home, neither of us can get back.
Shattered teeth, clanging bone, we bang out more tracks. Farther away from home, neither of us can get back. Shattered teeth, clanging bone, we bang out more tracks. Farther away from home, neither of us can get back. Shattered teeth, clanging bone, we bang out more tracks. We bang out more tracks. We bang out more tracks.
That strikes a chord for me because, like yourself, I'm from California as well. My family grew up in the Western Addition in the Fillmore district. It was known as the Harlem of the West Coast, Filipino and Black. It's my own background. On my Filipino side, my grandmother had a house in the Western Addition that they lost to eminent domain, and all of my father's friends, their parents had lost, their homes as well. My uncle, he jokingly refers to the Fillmore like this, but it's not really, he's not really joking. He called it a village in the ghetto. He says it was like a Black, Japanese, and Filipino neighborhood. Because, growing up, all of my father's friends were Black. My father didn't have any white friends. He didn't even have any Filipino friends. All the guys that came over, they used to hang out and everything.
50
right?
years ago,
but
Americans had been given a choice of directing their tax money to development of information technology so that their grandchildren could have iPods and the internet, or else putting the same funds into developing a livable and sustainable socioeconomic order. Well, they might very well have made the latter choice, but they had no choice. Now, that's standard. Public concerns and aspirations, if they're even mentioned, are marginalized and ridiculed. It's one very significant feature of the yawning democratic deficit, as we call it in other countries. It's the failure of formal democratic institutions to function properly. And that's no trivial matter. They can't be controlled by force. So it would be necessary to do something else, namely to turn to control of attitudes and opinions. These were the days when the huge public relations industry emerged in the freest countries in the world, Britain and the United States, where the problem was most severe. The public relations industry was devoted to what Walter Lippmann approvingly called a new art in the practice of democracy, the manufacture of consent. Arundhati Roy has a book in which he asks whether the evolution of formal democracy in India and the United States, in fact, not only there, might turn out to be the end game of the human race. And that's not an idle question. The popular struggle continues to clip its wings quite impressively in the wake of 1960s activism, which had quite a substantial effect on civilizing the society and raised the prospects for further progress to a much higher plane. And the mood on Wall Street was captured by two Bank of New York employees who predicted that their lives and pay would improve even if the broader economy did not. The architects of policy protect their own interests, no matter how grievous the effect on others. The Obama administration is just in the pocket of Wall Street. The government has taken extreme care not to upset the interests of the financial institutions or to question the basic outlines of the system that got us here, and the elite business interests who played a central role in creating the crisis with the implicit backing of the government, they're still there, and they're now using their influence to prevent precisely the set of reforms that are needed the government seems helpless or unwilling to act against them, which is no surprise considering who constitutes and who backs the government.
And always there are the children. There will be children in the heat of day. There will be children in the cold of winter. Children, like a quilted blanket, are welcome in our old age. Children, like a block of ice to a desert sheik, are a sign of status in our youth. We feed the children on our culture, that they might understand our travail. We nourish the children on our gods, that they may understand respect. We urge the children on the tracks that our race will not fall short. But children are not ours, nor we theirs. They are future, we are past. And how do we welcome the future? Not with the colonialism of the past, for that is our problem. Not with the racism of the past, for that is their problem. Not with the fears of our own status, for history is lived, not dictated. We welcome the young of all groups as our own, with the solid nourishment of food and warmth. We prepare the way with the solid nourishment of self-actualization. We implore all the young to prepare for the young, because always there will be children.
What I wanted to ask you, too, is, and it might be naive of me to even bring this up, Darity and his, very well-researched book, both of these books, Data and Statistics, there's things that can't be quantified, that tear into the deepness of our souls, as people, and things that we carry with us. I guess the traumas and experiences that, the past is not really the past. It never really leaves. So I guess what I kind of wanted to ask you was, what's your view on that? I mean, you had people that were humiliated and were the victims of severe physical violence. And, the money is one thing, but then I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's certain things that you can't really pay for.
Yeah. I've been chewing on that because that's part of the reason why we incorporated a narrative aspect of our reparations process. And so we have students, we have community activists, we have educators that are going through the community, recording the experiences of folk who remember when it was segregated, or remember the neighborhood before urban renewal, or remember what it was like before mass incarceration. And so those kinds of things are mattering to me because I think that we're still in the process of developing how we think and how we understand the problems that we're looking at. In a capitalist society, we're bound to look at things through a marketplace lens. And so things are valued by money, the money you put on it. But it's like you said, the real impact of those eras is the trauma you carry forward. And so how do we assess the repair of that trauma? And I say it in a broad sense. And one of the ways that was suggested to me by one of my mentors is that he said that part of what we need to consider as the construction of a new community is the vital place of a Black cultural arts center, the ability to express it and to record it, to artistically present it, whether it's visual, performed, or however the medium calls for. It will go a very long ways in not if not healing, certainly coming to terms with the pain that we I think individually experience, but also communally experience.
Are you talking about one particular center or a number of centers throughout the country?
Well, no. I'm thinking of a number of centers. In fact, I'm planting that seed here in Asheville of the suggestion that we need a Black cultural arts center here.
Yes.
With open doors, with recording facilities, with visual arts facilities, in partnership with the Asheville Arts Museum if necessary. But my point being is that it's under the control and governance of the Black communities here.
In the beginning, there was earth, water, air, and fire. This was a most delicate balance Jaja children must admire. For its emotion, sensation, thinking, intuition, to bear life's cross, to master it consciously, not to mention through the mastery of the Aquarian, the Scorpion, the Taurian, the Lion. These are the four cornerstones, you see, which border human personality. A personality which to all, not some, must be overcome. A personality which features Ezekiel's and vision living creatures. They're aspects of you and me. They are that which was, that which is, that which evermore shall be. To bring us home at last, I get the strangest vibrations from the past. Why these men and women I've seen before, as the gift of remembering opens its doors, through which one sees universally that which has come and gone. For this life is a record of its very own creation, and I do believe it will only go on to bring us home at last. I get the strangest vibrations from the past. Why these men and women, they're playing brand new roles, yet they bear resemblance to days of old. It must be true, one reaps what one sows. He then who was high surely must now be low. So take your places, everyone, mustn't be slow. As all around you men sell their souls, and these men, they will sit in judgment of what you do, though the debt you owe is to none but you. For there is nothing in the life greater than you, though they try desperately to fit you to a smaller shoe. You don't have to wear it. You see, my friend, the great in men has always been. It's the same now as it was then. One man living at the expense of many, though this place we live is horn of plenty. Refuses to share it. But rest assured, there is none who's fast enough on the run, quick enough with a tongue, or even deadly enough with a gun, who can hide himself from himself. Therefore, all must pay, and pay dearly, for the past is right now clearly, and it's getting to be that time. Getting to be that time.
I was reading a quote by somebody that means a great deal to me, James Baldwin. He said that something like the crown was paid for long ago. You just need to wear it.
You know, we have traveled parallel roads, you and me. My sister lived on Turk Street in San Francisco. I mean, it's like, you know, now you're talking about James Baldwin. I mean, my wife graduated from Atlanta University with her master's in political science, and the commencement speaker was James Baldwin. Max Robinson and James Baldwin were there, and we were able to actually meet them and talk with them. And it's one of those things that you understand that what you're doing now is the carrying forth of a legacy that they picked up probably before we ever thought about picking them up. But the point being is that they carried them and handed them literally to us to carry forward. What you're doing with this program, for example, is phenomenal. And I think it's it's crucial.
Well, may I say thank you for saying that, Dr. Mullen. My name is Martha Senator, and this show, Listen and Be Heard. And we're honored and privileged to bring it to you on the airwaves of WPVM LP 103.7 Asheville, the voice of Asheville. And I would like to tell you a little bit about what you've been hearing in the last half hour or so. You've been, of course, listening to Tony Robles in conversation with Dr. Dwight D. Mullen, a man of knowledge right here in your neighborhood, the neighborhood of Asheville, North Carolina. In addition to the conversation between Tony and Dr. Mullen, you've heard some poetry, spoken word. There was a poem called Reconnecting Re, which was written and read by Robert Zachary. Thanks to Tony Robles for bringing that to us. You heard from Tracie Morris and Elliot Sharp, a cut called New Steel. Also, the voice of Noam Chomsky on a CD called Same, Same, But Different by Eminent Domain. And that cut was called Our Current Situation, the Chomsky Citation. And that was followed by Nikki Giovanni reading her poem, Always, There Are the Children. And I thought that it was pretty interesting what Dr. Mullen was talking about. He said the elimination of a problem is really not the same as the solution. I think that's something for us all to wrap our heads around. And I really do appreciate his suggestion that culture and cultural arts centers are a path to healing, to restoration, and reparation. We heard another cut from Copus, who once again is a very creative trio of musicians and poet in the Bay Area. And that cut was called In the Beginning. I think it's appropriate now to continue with the voice of James Baldwin. Once again, my name is Martha Senator. The show is Listen and Be Heard, and you are tuned to WPVM LP 103.7, Asheville.
I really don't like words like artist or integrity or courage or nobility. I have a kind of distrust of all those words because I don't really know what those words mean. Any more than I really know what such words as democracy or peace-loving or warlike or integration mean. And yet, one's compelled to recognize that all these imprecise words are kind of attempts made by us all to get to something which is real and which lives behind the word. Whether I like it or not, for example, and no matter what I call myself, I suppose the only word for me when the chips are down is that I am an artist. There is such a thing. There is such a thing as integrity. Some people are noble. There is such a thing as courage. The terrible thing is that all of these words, a reality behind these words, depend ultimately on what the human being, meaning every single one of us, believe to be real. The terrible thing is that all these words, the reality behind them, depend on choices one has got to make forever and ever and ever, every day. I am not interested really in talking to you as an artist. It seems to me that the artist struggle for his integrity is a kind of metaphor, must be considered as a metaphor for the struggle which is universal and daily of all human beings on the face of this terrifying globe to get to become human beings. It is not your fault, and it is not my fault that I write. I would never become before you in the position of a complainant for doing something that I must do. What we might get at this evening, if we are lucky, if the mic doesn't fail, if my voice holds out, if you ask me questions, is what the importance of this effort is.
I want to also, also honor, like you said, I want to also honor the memory of Max Robinson as well, because we used to see him on TV. He was the anchor on ABC News, and he's great inspiration.
Yeah, and his brother was a primary writer, The Debt. He brought reparations into the post-civil rights conversation.
Hymn for the 1st of August by John Pierpoint. Where Britannia's emerald isles gem the Caribbean Sea, and an endless summer smiles, lo, the Negro thrall is free. Yet not on Columbia's plains hath the sun of freedom risen. Here, in darkness and in chains, toiling millions pine in prison. Shout, ye islands disenthralled, point the finger as in scorn at a country that is called freedom's home, where men are born heirs for life to chains and whips, bondmen who have never known wife, child, parent, that their lips ever dared to call their own. Yet a Christian land is this, yea, and ministers of Christ slavery's foot in homage kiss, and their brother, who is priced higher than their Saviour even, do they into bondage sell, pleading thus the cause of heaven, serving thus the cause of hell. Holy Father, let thy word, spoken by thy prophets old, by the pliant priest be heard, and let lips that are now cold, chilled by Mammon's golden wand, with our nation's burden glow, till the free man and the bond shout for slavery's overthrow.
Here in Hendersonville, we have a sister named Crystal Cawley, who's founder of the Black Business Network and the Black History Collective of Henderson County. She's doing a lot of work. She found there were some unmarked graves here of enslaved people that she found, and she's done a lot of research, historical research. And I'm hoping maybe I could connect the both of you. What would be great for Henderson is if we could even have a panel here on reparations, because urban renewal hit this part of the state as well.
Things weren't always like this. We were riders of Garvey's whirlwind, working the rhythms of blues-drenched streets, jazz-soaked nightclubs, and gatherings of Hoongans and necromancers committed to struggle, breathing the fire of Malcolm's words.
Martin Luther King Jr. way was Grove Street, and no children stood on corners, speaking the language of doom and hawking the wares of self-doubt and destruction.
Fillmore was alive with the comings and goings and doings of a people dancing cross-collared green floors, holding up cornbread walls under buttermilk skies, pawing, clawing, dreaming, scheming, screaming, getting up, standing up, flying, dying, crying, conniving their way towards newer tomorrows.
Good brothers and sisters on the speedboat of revolution, our sights set on this thing called freedom. Things weren't always dismal and dank like this.
We were cosmic griots taking the point, searching infinite parameters of sights and sounds from the funky four corners of existence, talking smack by the boatloads and getting one up on the would-be grafters of our dreams.
Slipping and sliding through concrete bayous in urban undergrowth, the bloodhounds of oppression, repression, and suppression, snapping and baying at the iridescence of our heels.
Some of us drank gallons and gallons of Red Mountain, or Chardonnay up to Chardonnay Ripple, under the harsh glow of red and blue party lights, and held tight to women blacker than 40 midnights, suddenly beautiful.
Getting the R-E-S-P-E-C-T and do-rightness Aretha demanded in that brand new bag James Brown shouted and hollered into our thoughts.
Things weren't always crazy like this.
Incarcerated in the desolate barnyards of America, we were fast and slick in the way we saw ourselves.
Cutesy-tootsie roosters wearing our crowns a good 50 degrees to the side, and laid, sprayed, and ready to get paid in plumage of silk and satin.
We kept the hawks of our misery confused and perplexed beyond cocaine and cognac-tainted perspectives.
We were keepers of the eagle's eye view,
on the watch out for the cutthroats of reason, the backstabbers of sanity on these long, winding and twisting highways and byways.
Booking midnight flights of fancy on the music of Train, Albert and Pharaoh.
The teachers of Fanon, Mao, Che, and Huey.
The muses of Baraka, Sonia, Askia, and Larry.
Trying to get back home to Diddy Wah Diddy.
In a nick of time to call winners.
And cash in all the chips.
In this game of chance called life.
You had mentioned, Asheville specifically, because we need to wind down. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's been going on with the advisory committee? And perhaps if there are any nuances that draw a distinction between some of the legislation, some of the fights for or the push for reparations in Asheville as opposed to, let's say, in California or in some other state.
Yeah, we're I think unique in that we're starting at the end, whereas many of the other reparations processes are beginning their considerations with enslavement. As it works down through segregation and lynching and down through the decades. We didn't do that here. We started it with ongoing rubber meets the road discriminatory outcomes of public policy areas. And the 5 areas we chose were the ones that the students at UNCA originally researched through the state of Black Asheville and documented that there were outstanding disparities by race and by gender in education, healthcare, housing, economic development, and criminal justice. And so one of the things that we've come across is that those match social determinants for healthcare, and they match the determinants for what we call educational outcomes, educational disparities. And so there's a lot of overlap. And one of the challenges has been to organize and understand the overlap and intersections of the public policy areas, and so that our recommendations are clear and will have impact while simultaneously being coordinated. I'm really happy about the language that's being developed, because there was no language to have this conversation. But the commissioners have really been working very hard. I'm talking many of the commissioners are going to 2 and 3 meetings a month, which means basically a meeting a week, a meeting every other week to work this out so that we can offer the city and county alternatives to the ways that they've been doing things historically.
And as far as the city and county, I know being from San Francisco, sometimes you do have a lot of committees and subcommittees and things like that. Has the experience been pretty positive in terms of working with the city?
It has been. It's surprisingly so. Is that I expected the same thing. Is that I thought there would be antagonisms between city and county, or at least egos that would that see themselves as superseding any of the needs or recommendations that might follow from the commission. And I just have not run across that. In fact, I've been pressed as chair to get on with it. They want to see something now before their terms give up so that they can leave a legacy. And I'm really happy with that kind of attitude.
Yeah, when you really look at this and get into the book, and then even on YouTube, watching interviews and things like that, you get a sense of history, Black history being American history, really. I mean, you can't really separate the two.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been learning a lot too. For instance, about Augustus Summerfield Marion, who I guess there's a Merriman Avenue, who was he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina and U.S. Senator, and he wrote that slavery has certainly existed from the earliest times down to the present, and it would seem that it is, in one sense, of divine appointment, which really says something. I mean, you get somebody who's at the highest level of the law in the state. That's it's in the bones, right? And something that we're trying to push against and dismantle.
And, and that's one of the things that when I have long times to talk with people that I ask them to examine is the mindset that you've inherited that you aren't really aware is affecting your vision. I mean, we see things through a segregated lens. That era of segregation is still with us. It's the only explanation for how we can accept these disparities in education with all of our children sitting side by side, with year after year having these horrible outcomes by race. There are only 2 answers. One, either the institution is continuing to do what it has always done and we need to fix it, or there's something wrong with these children, and that's at the genetic level. So what can you do? Now, I'm not willing to accept that second one.
I want to suggest 2 propositions. The first one is that the poets, by which I mean all artists, are finally the only people who know the truth about us. Soldiers don't, statesmen don't, priests don't, union leaders don't. Only the poets. That's my first proposition. We know about the Oedipus complex not because of Freud, but because of a poet who lived in Greece thousands of years ago. And what he said then about what it was like to be alive is still true, in spite of the fact that now we can get to Greece in something like 5 hours, and then it would have taken I don't know how long a time. The second proposition is what I really want to get at tonight. And it sounds mystical, I think, in a country like ours and at a time like this. But something awful is happening to a civilization when it ceases to produce poets, and what is even more crucial, when it ceases anywhere whatever to believe in the report that only poets can make. Conrad told us a long time ago, I think it was in a book called Victory, but I might be wrong about that, but the line is, woe to that man who does not put his trust in life. Or Henry James said, live. Live all you can. It's a mistake not to. And Shakespeare said, and this is what I take as being the truth about everybody's life all of the time, out of this nettle, danger, we pluck this flower, safety. Art is here to prove and to make one bear, to help one bear, the fact that all safety is an illusion. It's in this sense that all the artists are divorced from and even opposed to necessarily any system whatever. Let's trace it just for kicks for a minute. And I'll use myself. I won't say me, but it's my story. The first thing an artist finds out is when he's very, very young. When I say young, I mean before he is 15. That is to say, before properly speaking, he or she can walk or talk, before he or she has had enough experience to begin to assess his or her experience. And what occurs at that point in this hypothetical artist's life is a kind of silence. For reasons he cannot explain to himself or to others, he does not belong anywhere. Maybe you're on the football team, maybe you're a runner, maybe you belong to a church, you certainly belong to a family. And abruptly, in other people's eyes, this is very important, in other people's eyes, you begin to discover that you are moving, and you cannot stop this movement, to what looks like the edge of the world. Now, what is crucial, and one begins to understand it much, much later, is that if you were this hypothetical artist, if you were in fact the dreamer that everybody says you are, if in fact you are wrong not to settle for the things that you cannot, for some mysterious reason, settle for.
They were teachers, those colossal masters of the saxophone, taking us from the center of the universe to the ends of space and time, and back again, to teach us the meaning of existence. Extensor obligatos, cascading colors like splinters of light, shifting tapestries of sound and rhythm, harmonic structures superimposed, hypnotically layered over tonal centers like sheets of sound that pierce the night with the cry of the blues, and taught us the meaning of the spirit, agony and ecstasy. The music taught us both of happiness and of sadness, sin as well as salvation, that you have to be brave, that you have to be tender, like a mantra from the east, like a wise and holy man. John Coltrane took the music all the way from the nightclub to the ashram, proving the universality of the form and transforming jazz into the art of transcendental improvisation. Though I never met the man, when I say John Coltrane was my father, it is because he taught me of life as well as music. He taught us all that there is something greater beyond just ourselves to live for, that one man, no matter how humble, and by the process of purification and dedication to an ideal, can find his own way from the confusion of hopelessness and dereliction to the cosmic. They were teachers. They were teachers.
3 final questions, okay? What books inspired you? You know, what books inspired you? If there was a novel or a particular book, what song or songs inspired you? Like, you know, like I asked my father that. He always talks about People Get Ready by the Impressions. He says that's the one that really gets to him. And then finally, you know, I know you're a busy guy, but what do you do for fun? You know, I mean, I hope that's not a bad question.
Oh no. It's just no, it's good. You know, my books, my 3 top books were I know it sounds totally irrelevant, but anyway. One was Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folk. It's just every time I read it, it says something different to me. And I've read it several times, but The Souls of Black Folk were there. When I was a kid, it was one of my epiphanies. It's one of my moments of clarity that I understood that I was stepping into a continuum if I continued on this road. It was by Richard Wright. Yeah. And the book was called Black Boy. And the second part of that, which they got the nerve to publish 30 years after his death, was called American Hunger. But it's his political journey that I found totally fascinating. Black Boy and American Hunger. And the third book, I know it's crazy. I understand it. I really get this. But I was educated by the Seventh-day Adventists. And they literally made me memorize the Bible. And I think that the Bible holds as an ancient text the roadmap for how we got to where we are. And I think that it's really interesting that as you talk about things with people today, they don't realize how much of what they're thinking is actually rooted in biblical terms, Quranic terms, the terms of the Torah. Because all 3 are the children of Abraham. And so I'm not denying that part of my heritage for me. For songs, I'm old school, right? So for me, Motown is always there. But for me, it was Mahalia Jackson. And I can tell you the song that would always, and still even today, because it gives me hope. And that's the part that keeps me going is In the Upper Room. Every time I cannot listen to In the Upper Room without understanding that there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing. And it will be all right. It will be all right. For fun, I cook.
The upper room where Jesus sat in that hill, blessed feet. Daily there my sin begging for his mercy sweet. Trust in his grace and power. Seek and bear his love in prayer. It is this heart feel I said with in prayer.
You are tuned to WPVM 103.7,
the upper
voice of Asheville.
Where Jesus, oh, it's in the upper room with my Lord and your God. Well, it's in the upper room. Yes, it's in the upper room. Well, it's in the upper room, talking with the Lord. Oh, my, hallelujah, Lord, it's in the upper room with Jesus. Oh, it's in the upper room, talking with my Lord. Yes, in your God. You know it's in the upper room. Ooh, it's in the upper room. Lord, it's in the upper room, talking with the Lord. Oh, yes, God. Hallelujah. In the upper room, 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 Lord, in the upper room, yeah, in the upper room, Lord, in the upper room, in the upper room, Lord, in the upper room, yeah, the upper room, Lord, yeah, the upper room, yeah, in the upper room, Lord, in the upper room, talking with my Lord, oh, and your God, hallelujah, it's in the upper room where Jesus, oh, and the upper room, talking with my Lord, yes, in your God, and I'm in the upper room. Ooh, it's in the upper room. Lord, it's in the upper room, talking with the Lord. Oh, yeah, yeah. Hallelujah. It's in the upper room, oh, where Jesus, Lord, I'm in the upper room, talking with my Lord, yes, in you, God, and I'm in the upper room, yeah, I'm in the upper room, Lord is in the upper room, talking with my Lord. Oh, yeah.
Dr. Mullen, thank you so much. And for For the WPVM listeners and folks that might be out of the area who might be listening online, if they want to get involved and really help with what the advisory committee is doing in Asheville, or perhaps getting involved in their own jurisdictions with some of the work in their own cities or states, how could they go about doing that?
Actually, the Asheville city site is really useful in terms of background and materials and catching up where we are. So the city of Asheville has a site, and in that site is the place of reparations. And if you go to City of Asheville Reparations, it'll take you straight to it. But also the Racial Justice Coalition has been doing really good work with supporting the reparations process. And so community engagement, community education, they're my go-to people.
Thank you so much. And a couple of the books that were cited, The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, which is a timeless book that really articulates the souls of Black folk over the centuries. The other book that you recommended, Adolph Reed Jr., The South, Jim Crow and Its Aftermath. That's another book as well that might have a different lens than the book by Dr. Darity. The Black Reparations Project, a handbook for racial justice, edited by William Darity Jr. and Kirsten Mullen, a collection of essays, many of which are kind of academic, but if you want to get into the statistics, and it gives you a good historical basis for the call for reparations. And it also gives kind of a good structural map on how to approach reparations, how to look at it from a structural standpoint. The other book here, and this is by University of North Carolina Press, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. This is the second edition, also edited by the husband and wife team of William A. Darity Jr., also known as Sandy, and A. Kirsten Mullen. Dr. Mullen, thank you so much. It really was a pleasure. I wish we could have talked for another hour or so. I'm hoping that we can keep in contact and that we can perhaps have you come over here to Henderson County, because we would really love your scholarship and your fellowship, and to really get the message out there. We very, very much appreciate, and also being that this is Black August, we want to honor the people that have passed, our ancestors, and the people that continue to push us forward and inform our lives today.
That sounds fine to me. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. There's a major grant that has just been won by the Land of Sky Commission, and it's the recognition and preservation of African-American cemeteries. So in terms of honoring our ancestors, we just found a new major source of resources to do that. The Land of Sky Regional Council, and it's there to look at the identification and preservation of African-American cemeteries. It's Asheville, all in Western North Carolina.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And thank you for steering me in the direction of William Darity's book. Very, very helpful. This is Listen and Be Heard Radio. Check us out online, listenandbeheard.net. Thank you, Dr. Mullen. And we're going to toss it back to Martha in the studio.
I emerge from the black hole where my people find refuge and the devil runs wild while the child of sin and mother of death prey on the deaf, dumb, and blind kind, dying while trying to find a peace of mind. Same time declining the truth. Youth schooling youth with cliches. We stays overlooking signs of the times, seeking detours and back streets towards fortune and fame, claiming the name of the Most High while riding it in vain, playing the blame game, falling like rain. And when Jah come for his people, be no chance for explain.
Hush now, don't explain. You said too much with your heart of pain. You think you command what you don't understand with your head in the sand. You are the victim of circumstance, vampire. You're sucking the souls, thinking that you are the one in control.
all individuals of your physical. At times your spirit won't grow. Can't explain why you feel unbearable pain. This world can make you insane from lies and false claims. It's a cold game and it's always getting harder. So you gotta be smarter and do what you gotta, but don't mess up your karma. There's many solutions, but few chosen. Decisions decipher what situations roll in. It's all about our thinking before the actions. Must see through our emotions. All times will have us stressed, feeling helpless. At times we act desperate, but don't forget that we got blessed.
What you fail to realize. What you fail to realize. God has opened our eyes. God has opened our eyes. What you fail to realize. God has opened our eyes. Opened up our eyes. Fail to realize. Cars drive by and people pass me. The world flies by. Now I don't want no more lies, twisted views. Walk in my shoes, time to pages. Hush now, don't explain. You should overflow the shame. Persecuting children, oppressing, constricting their veins. Don't explain. What you fail to realize. What you fail to realize. Open our eyes. Open our eyes. What you fail to realize. What you fail to realize is that we see through your disguise. Step to the plate, my people. Our time has come in this new millennium. Change is here. We're blessed with truth. Don't be scared away. No time to stray.
Recess is over. Let's get back to the basics. Face it. Rockets and shuttles into space don't put you in God's place. The rat race to establish life on the moon brings us one step closer to our doom. Singing a tune of destruction, following Lucifer's instruction, in conjunction with daily desires for money, hoes, and clothes. Goals of the unaware and uninspired. The liar's tongue shall forever seek deaf ears, for fear that the truth will reveal the snake scales beneath the tall tales. And when caught on the spot red-handed, bandits flee. Explanation not necessary.
So, do you do a lot of research as a writer? I know I do. Like, I'm writing a book about a character in New York City, and I'm from New York City, and the character is loosely based on me, but she's so concerned with the history of New York City. I've had to do a lot of research about New York that I don't necessarily all use in the book, but I'm drawing on in order for her to be knowledgeable as she claims to be. Have you found yourself in that situation, and how do you approach that?
A lot of my writing is either poetry or fiction, and setting is so important in your writing because you have your characters that are moving across the world in some kind of tension-filled situation and conflict. And, when you're developing a character, what you're really doing is you're reflecting how the character reacts and lives in their particular setting. So if we're looking at a setting during war, it's going to be very different than a setting during, some other type of period, right? So, there are writers that, do research on their characters, for instance, right? That they do full biographies. They know, when they had their first kiss, what their favorite flavor of ice cream is, what kind of car they drive. They run the gamut. And like you said, Martha, you don't have to use every single detail, but you kind of pick and choose. You have kind of a reservoir. There are writers that I know, like Isabel Allende, who take a full year because a lot of her stories are historical fiction to look into the history. But the pitfall sometimes with trying to be really accurate to these things is that sometimes the story might suffer because of it. Yeah, you're trying to play it so close to the vest that you don't allow your imagination to to kick in a little bit, you know.
Say I want to write a book about a character who's, negotiating with the city council about reparations. Well, I'm going to have to know something about all the issues of reparations and different points of view and why the character, even just to explain why the character is so interested in it. Dr. Mullen mentions that he doesn't quite agree with all the research. He agrees with some of it, but then he has a different point of view about how to approach these things. So even when we do a lot of research, we still have to bring ourselves to it as well. So what are you reading?
Outside of the Black Reparations Project, we do have a poet that we're going to be talking to in the next week or so. Her name is Ann Miles. She has a poetry book called The Late Epistle, which was the winner of the Sappho's Prize in Poetry. We're going to have her as a future guest. Other than that, there is a book that I kind of go to again and again as a touchstone. It's a book called Fires by the late Raymond Carver, who was a prolific short story writer. And it's a book that it contains essays, poetry, and short stories. I like the book, not so much for the short stories and the poetry, but I like it for the essays. I go back to the essays because for me, it's kind of grounding. He talks about fires in the context that, fires are really the influences that writers have. What makes them write the way they do. And, for him, his influences, really aren't other writers. His influences were his children and his life as a young father. Those were really the things. And we always go back to that Flannery O'Connor quote about, she said that everything that a writer needs fuel-wise, right? Everything that a writer needs material-wise has transpired by the age of 19. They have all the material they need by the age of 19. But he disagrees with that. He says that really nothing really happened in his life until he became a father, because they were poor. They were trying to make it, and they weren't making any money. He says things weren't really happening until his kids were born. That's when all hell broke loose.
I know that feeling. Well, thanks for joining me, Tony. And we'll be back next week.
For sure. As always, same time, same place,
We're supposed to be making some cookies because we went past that 600 mark of subscribers.
Oh, no kidding. What kind of cookies did we say?
I don't think we did, but we probably both agree on chocolate as an ingredient, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely.
That was my co-producer, Tony Robles. And my name is Martha Senator. And this show is Listen and Be Heard. Let me tell you a little bit about what we heard in the last hour. We heard another little part of part one of The Struggle. That was James Baldwin. Certainly worth looking up, researching, listening to again and again. I always love to just hear James Baldwin speak. He has such a measured, thoughtful way of speaking that you can never imagine him even saying anything by mistake. And yet loving too. I always hear love in his voice, a certain restraint. He never really sounds even caustic, even though he speaks about such weighty things. And we heard a poem by John Pierpont, Hymn for the 1st of August. And that was read by John Michael McDonald. A CD called The Poetry of Slavery. We also heard a poem called The Movement by Wordwind Chorus on a CD of the same name. And I played a little more of The Struggle because I wanted to. There was also a cut called They Were Teachers, and that was by Walter T. Lacey and Willie E. Jones from a CD in my collection called Jazz Speak. And of course, Mahalia Jackson, In the Upper Room. And that last poem, I honestly can't tell you much about. It's from a promotional CD from Blue Magazine, spelled BLU. And I looked them up online. They used to be at bluemagazine.net, but they're not anymore. So it's some CD that I got when I used to be a producer at WBAI Radio in New York back in the 1990s. And just because that's all I can say about it doesn't mean that it's not worth listening to. That's what we're all about here, listening and being heard. I would like to hear from you if you would like to be heard. You can send your book, your spoken word CD, to me, Martha Senator, or to Tony Robles, care of WPVM Radio at 34 Wall Street, number 407, Asheville, North Carolina, 28801. We are here weekly on WPVM Radio. You can visit us at listenandbeheard.net, where you will find an archive of all of our previous programs, some very interesting columns, and a form that you could fill out to contact us and let us know if you would like to contribute, to volunteer, to help with this program. If you have interview ideas, if you've read or written a book, want to write a review, we publish columns there. We also publish the unedited video interviews that we do over Zoom. So if you want to get more in-depth with some of the authors that we've interviewed, we post the unedited, longer interviews. We don't really edit them for content as much as time. If you want to get the extended conversations, because sometimes they run 45 minutes or an hour, go visit listenandbeheard.net and scroll through and look at all the very interesting authors we have already spoken to. I want to thank all of the people who contribute to this program. Jay Rodriguez Sierra contributes all the wonderful background music loops and things that we get to use that are all original. You can find out more about Jay at jrodriguezsierra.com or at jrodriguezsierra on Instagram. Tony Robles, of course, and I want to thank Davian Dial for giving us the opportunity to be heard here in Asheville weekly, the station manager who also guides me through my own insecurities sometimes, which I do appreciate. My name is Martha Senator. I want to thank you for listening and for the opportunity to be heard.
Living it is learning from someone who can actually show you. It's cleaning your teacher's house or helping her to find one. It's never ever saying J-O-B. Living it is a one-way ticket and no solid plans. It's smoking a J in a smoke cafe in Amsterdam. It's saying the day is pretty in a strange new city. Living it is giving it. Giving it is having it. Having it is taking it. Taking it is moving it. Shaking it. Creating it. Loving it. having nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's putting all of your charms and attributes, every single one of them, to good use. It's knowing the kindness of strangers and love for sale. Living it is knowing where to buy rice and beans in bulk. It's knowing herbs are cheaper than doctors. It's keeping it together when you're falling apart. It's writing poetry to ease a broken heart. Living it is knowing the stage, looking into bright lights, late nights, barroom fights, fantastic sights, inspiration. And moving on, 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 and moving on. Because living it is giving it. Giving it is having it to give. Having it to give is taking it, snatching it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is being responsible for your own groove. It's playing on street corners for nickels and centines and being asked to move. It's sleeping in roofless squats in ancient convents. It's running up against police, getting thrown into the streets where you belong. Because living it is subletting. Living it is knowing your feet belong on the ground. That life is a dream, that things are never, ever, ever, ever what they seem. And the certainty that the good things, the really, really, really good things, are free. Living it is love. Living it is love. Living it is love.